Good morning and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, so get ready to get triggered. Good morning and welcome to Season 2 of the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, as you might have heard in our intro. And with me, not as always, I have just Adam right now. Adam, how's it going?
It's good to be here. I feel kind of naked without the rest of the folks, but
I do too, yeah.
but I think I'll be all right. I think I'll manage until one of them gets here. Marshall won't be joining us today. He's with the Club of Canada, so we wish him all the best.
We do. He's going to be doing some diplomatic stuff.
He is, and he's representing as well. Yeah, it feels good to be back. Had a good break. Ready to get back into it.
Yeah. So you had a Happy New Year. Did you do anything? Did you do anything exciting?
I went to Cuba. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
I got to bathe in socialism. So it was fun for me. It was my happy place. You see a whole different. It's a whole different world. It's like you buried a time capsule from 1951. No, sorry, 1961. Since the embargo on the U.S. and things like Wi-Fi all of a sudden become a luxury. Like, of course, we know that Wi-Fi is something great to have, and it's not necessarily a necessity, but it's very limited access. Multiple choices of food. Like, we stayed at an all-inclusive resort. There was a buffet, but it's a buffet in quotation marks. I mean, you have two different kinds of meat, two different kinds of starches, some vegetables and fruits, and that's it. And it's similar to a culture shock when you kind of, it's like, oh, this is a buffet here, okay. When you get Wi-Fi and it's you get it in a very small hotspot in the lobby of the resort, and
It's like a miracle.
And it's a miracle if you connect, and it's a miracle if you can, they have cards that you log in.
Yeah.
And it's a miracle if you can get them to work, and it's a miracle if they haven't run out of them yet, and it's a miracle if you have Cuban money to buy them, and then when all the pieces fall into the puzzle, you're like, I have Wi-Fi, and then it's like slow as hell. So you're like, okay, this is Wi-Fi here. And then they want to show you the American quarter of Havana. And you go there, and it's like a replica of the White House, a replica of Sloppy Joe's restaurant, and you're like, okay, this is what they consider American here. And then, you go around and you see all these old cars that have LED lights, new license plates, new paint, new everything, and it's like the old body of a new car, and you're like, okay, this is what they consider a car here. Or, like, this is what they consider nice clothing here. It's cheap stuff that you would, not to be harsh, but, it's cheap stuff that you would find in places like Chinatown or stuff there, and that's fancy clothing for them. And, I was on the beach and I made friends with people, and they asked me for my shoes, they asked me for my sunglasses, but regardless of all the kind of sort of, okay, this is how things are here, it was very pleasant. The people were very happy. They were all okay with what they had, and the things are changing. You can see it. There are some American flags around. They're preparing for the Americans. They're building more resorts, repairing roads. Like, they're getting ready. The Americans are coming. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Are you going to go back sometime?
Yeah, I want to be a little bit older so that I've experienced a little more life, not to take things as they are, to learn how to gamble a bit, to learn how to bargain a bit better, to learn how to, know when somebody's approaching you just to talk to you, to ask for something you have. I want to learn how to, be a bit more street savvy before I go back. And I want to learn how to ration my money better, so I need better budgeting experience because I blew all my money in the first 4 days. Because everything I saw I wanted to buy. So I want to work on that. And I want to go with people that... the people that I went with were incredible. And I'd love to go back with them because they were amazing people. If you're listening, you guys were an awesome crew. But I want to go with other people, and with them, so, you get older, you make more friends and new people. So, yeah, I'd go back to answer your question.
Awesome. So, we're going to do things a bit differently this season. So, we're going to start with a few news stories, current news stories, before getting into our main topic. But before that, I do want to mention that From now on, we start at 11:10 a.m. and go to 12, just a schedule change. But we also want to let you know that this season, you can be part of the conversation. You can message us on our Facebook page live to have your comments read on air. All right? So now, you can comment also on our Facebook live feed if that's better for you. But you can also message us and we'll bring you up. So, first thing, Trump's coming up.
Trump is coming. This has been a long time in the running. You're seeing him now putting the finishing touches on his cabinet. He's appointed people like Betsy DeVos, what's his name, Mad Dog? Mattis.
James Mattis.
James Mattis, Betsy DeVos, Rex Tillerson, Ben Carson, and other people in his cabinet. You're seeing the controversy they have, their explanation for certain things, their ties to big business, to big oil, and on the show, as we were talking about Trump and the many times that we did, I was very open-minded in terms of Trump. I'm the quote-unquote left-wing person on the show, and if I haven't made it clear, then I failed. But I really didn't like Hillary Clinton, and I was towards the end of the show and how the campaign was progressing, I leaned towards Trump. And I'm not that... I don't hate Trump himself all that much. He's made some bad comments, and, even conservatives themselves will, be the first to say that they don't appreciate some of the comments that he's made. But his cabinet is what worries me. Because the cabinet is what runs the show. Obama said himself, his job is of such a high... excuse me... such a high altitude that you can't really run it yourself. And it's the people around you that run it for you. And people like Rex Tillerson that has investments in big oil, and people like Betsy DeVos that says you need guns in schools to protect you from grizzly bears. And people like James Mattis. James Mattis I don't hate all that much. He wants to support the Iran deal, the two-state solution, gays in the military. He's open and for most and all of that, so I don't mind him that much. Ben Carson, I'm a little critical. I know he grew up in housing projects, so it might seem like he has that anecdotal side of him to run the housing department. But the Ministry of the EPA is currently in an ongoing lawsuit with the EPA and has sued the EPA over 14 times, and he has a bachelor's in animal science, so I don't think he's qualified. And I was a little more worried now than I am before. So I'm waiting to see what happens.
Awesome. I'm also very, very... I'm looking forward to it.
Regime change always brings some good. It's never all bad. And I think, any person in power for almost 10 years, it's time to go. So, thanks, Obama, and good luck in the future.
Now, our next story, Kevin O'Leary has entered the federal conservative leadership race to become the leader of the party and hopefully win, hopefully win in 2019. What's your take on that? Because we've had a lot of feedback about having this as a separate show, and we will. So I'll give a shout out to Austin Blazes because it was Blazes, my bad. It was his idea. But we will do a show on that. But just a quick note on it. What are your thoughts?
Look, people are calling him the Maple Trump, or the Canadian Trump. And 2 weeks ago, people were calling Kelly Leitch the Canadian Trump. So, I watched an interview with Kevin O'Leary this morning on CBC. It was about 6 minutes, and it was pretty informative. They asked him, what's it like being tagged to Trump's campaign? And he said, look, I come from Lebanese and Irish immigrants. If there was a wall here, I wouldn't exist. He understands that immigrants have come to this country to build a better life. He recognizes that Canada is built by immigrants. Without immigrants, we would collapse. So, that's Trump's biggest issue right off the bat, that he's anti-immigrant. Kevin O'Leary, he's a TV personnel. TV personnels are supposed to be jerks to get attention. He's mean. I used to watch Shark Tank and Dragon's Den with my dad back when I had cable TV at home. And everything that he would say, he would be right, but he would be harsh. He's like, you're making a stupid mistake, you're an idiot, whatever, da da da. But everything he'd do, he'd be right.
Mm-hmm.
And, Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, they would check back on those people that, they didn't make a deal with him. Some of them would succeed, but most of them would fail. I think he's just generating a lot of noise. But on the same side, that's what I thought when Trump entered the race. And here he is, the next president of the United States. So, I'm not a conservative. I don't think I will ever be able to vote conservative because of their environmental track record, and that's very important to me. But he wants to bring the Conservative Party back into the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that with all the noise he's generating, he's doing that very well. Look, the Republicans haven't had a majority House and Senate since 1929. So Trump did that very well. He brought the party back. So I think that it'll be something to watch. That's all.
And quick note on that: do you think he has a chance? Very quickly.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
If Trump could do it, he can do it. So. I'm looking harder at people like Tony Clement and Maxime Bernier, but he looks like he can do it.
Good take on that. Okay, so now let's get to our very heated topic with half the crew. But our topic is, for our first show, a big one, white privilege.
Dun, dun, dun.
What is it? Well, according to the Oxford Dictionary, white privilege is the belief that there's a set of advantages and or immunities that white people benefit from on a daily basis beyond those common to all others. Is this true? Does white privilege exist? We'll find out today. So today will be a very controversial episode, and we must therefore warn our audiences that the views expressed are not those of Ryerson faculty or of Ryerson University. Again, you can message us live and give us your take on what white privilege is and do you think it exists? That'll be our question for the day. Do you think it exists and why? So our first question to you, Adam. Does it exist?
I think it does. And I'll elaborate on my statement. I don't think white privilege exists in a way that, a white person is standing in line at the grocery store and they're getting to the checkout. They're like, okay, here's the white privilege discount. Your total is whatever. You save 20% because you're white. I don't think that's what white privilege is. What I do think white privilege is basically when you're applying to a big law firm. Big law firm's got 2,000 applications. Here's Daniel. He's coming in.
There's Daniel. Okay.
You've got 2,000 applications. You're looking through all the names, and you go through the list, and there's John Smith, Bob Sam, Michael Ignatieff, whatever, and then you get to like Harjeet Ramasadran, and you're looking at it, and you're like, ugh. And I think that I didn't mean to be crude, but in a way that you're going people that have this sort of prejudgment. And then sort of judge a book by its cover. They look at the name and they're like, okay. And I think that plays a big role in...
Just opening the door for Daniel, but continue.
How's it going, boss?
It's good.
And, you're looking at the name and you have an issue. Another thing is that when you're applying for housing, I did a whole research project on housing discrimination. And I found that my conclusion was that people of African American descent, people of Muslim practicing, people of color have trouble getting housing in places that have a sketchy record, like rental homes. They have issues being trusted to keep up with rent. And I think that you're at an airport and it's I don't want to make any assumptions, but it's always a family with hijabs that get randomly selected, not the nice white family in fedoras and Hawaiian shirts that are going to their vacation. It's the people that look of a certain profile or have a certain name, and I've had friends that have been randomly selected, their parents have been randomly selected because their name fits a certain registry. And another thing is that it's not so much, being white as in Caucasian, I'm a European mutt, I'm 2% milk. It's not so much that it's if you look white, you can pass. All of you have met Middle Eastern people, Asian people, Latin American people that all can pass as white people, and there's a name for that. That's white passing. And for example, my dad is Palestinian, my mother is a Jewish Israeli ancestry in Romania, and I consider myself a white passing person. I've never been, given a sort of an eyebrow raise or anywhere I go because people assume I'm white. But for example, I have cousins who are a lot darker than me, and they get it harder than I do. Mm-hmm. So that's what I think white privilege is.
And to you, Daniel, do you think white privilege exists? Why or why not?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. I just wasn't sure. In terms of like the existence of white privilege, there we go, much better. I feel like it definitely exists, but I feel like it shouldn't though. That's the problem.
Of course.
That's the main issue
That's
about
what
it.
it was about.
An example. Did you talk about yesterday by any chance?
No, not yet.
Okay,
but you can actually discuss it if you'd like.
I'd like to discuss that actually. It was somewhat like.
So
I don't know if I got I don't know if I got that offended or anything like that, but it definitely has an idea in terms of like identity, like.
Just to mention what happened yesterday, me, or Marshall, Daniel, and myself. Unfortunately, Adam was.
I was with you guys in spirit.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
We were on a show called #NoFilter on Rogers TV discussing Trump. We were called into that, and you can take over from that.
Well, when we got there, it was first of all, I like to say that I think the show was pretty successful. Like, everybody was talking about their different opinions, and it wasn't too like offensive at what anybody was saying. Everyone got their point across, and I think that's the most important part about that. I also think that like before the show, it was like, in terms of, we're gonna change up some of the panelists because they assumed that all the panelists on the show were just completely like using the buzzwords like cis white white males and stuff like that.
And entitled.
Entitled, yeah. They automatically assume that we're entitled just because we're white.
We're white male.
And then what I don't like about it is that they automatically assumed that I was white just because I'm with a bunch of other white people.
Yeah.
They just looked at me and they were like, "Oh, that's a white person." Like, I'm not white at all by any way of the term whatsoever. Both my parents are from Guatemala. They immigrated here. Like, I'm a first generation. I was born here in Canada. I don't identify as white. I think maybe I could see some people like they could say that I'm like the idea of being whitewashed.
Or white passing is the name, but
I mean, like, that's like, I feel like I shouldn't be considered white just because I've adapted to Canadian culture. So just because you assimilate to Canadian culture, that doesn't mean you're automatically white. Mm-hmm. Or just because I don't necessarily. I think people look at the stereotypical version of someone who's Latino, and they look at him and they assume that their skin is a lot more brown than mine.
Yeah.
And you can even look at the light that's passing on to the show.
And
like, it makes me look like very, very white, but like I do have like my skin.
You have melanin.
Yeah, exactly. I got some melanin in me. Like, I'm not pasty or anything.
Yeah, same here. Like, I don't look very white.
No, but you come from European immigrants.
Yeah.
But in terms of like with European immigrants and stuff like that, that's when people think of white, they generally assume people of European descent, people of from Canada, from the U.S., from New Zealand, Australia.
But if you like
anything that was previously from any European colonizers, basically.
But like even just quickly in Europe, if you look at people from Spain, Greece,
they look different.
Yeah, places in like the
and
border
it's the same
of France
continent.
and Spain, and you look at Italy, you go just so they're down south, you look that way, and people are dark, and it's a fact, and they're considered white people, and they, for example, I know that Arabs in the States are Arabs in the States have to register as white on the census.
Really?
And in no means are they treated like white people.
Mm-hmm.
They face discrimination all throughout.
Right.
And an Arab it means so much more than being from the Middle East. You have a religion, you have a sect, you have even if you're in the Bedouin clan, you have a tribe. If there's so many different subsections of being Arab, and
and the same thing applies for Spanish people.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of like my ancestry, like, I'm never gonna know 100%. Both my parents are from Guatemala. Technically, I think the word that we would use to describe it is mestizo, which is a combination of the indigenous population from Central
Yeah,
America and the combination of the Spanish conquistadores and then the ethnic
Yeah.
blending together of
Like my mother's
Yeah.
boyfriend is Argentinian
Mhm.
by blood, by nationality, by pride. He will
Mhm.
wear Messi's jersey,
Yeah.
shower with it, and he's white as snow.
Exactly.
He's absolutely white as snow.
My grandmother, like rest in peace and everything. She
Yeah.
was so white, and she came to Canada once, I think, to visit us.
Yeah.
This is maybe like more than 10 years ago. She came out. Like, she left like Lester B. Pearson. They're like, "Oh, hi, welcome to Canada. How are you?"
Yeah.
Speaking to her in English.
Yeah.
She knows not even. She knows like she didn't know a lick of English whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like my prom date and her family and my
Mhm.
friend, they're Lebanese and they tan and they sunburn in the shade because
Yeah.
they're so white. So white privilege doesn't come just by being Caucasian.
I think it's just a term that people use just to attack somebody for no
Yeah.
reason. You know.
So do you think so?
Like if somebody doesn't agree with whatever you're saying, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, you're an entitled white person.
Exactly.
Therefore, your argument doesn't make any sense
Yeah.
whatsoever.
So, leading into that, who pushes the idea of white privilege then? Because you said that when people don't agree with you, they just use the say that.
I mean, I've never
you're
experienced it
using
before
white
up until
privilege,
yesterday. I haven't
but I've
experienced that.
experienced it personally.
Obviously, yeah, that
Um,
makes sense. But
Uh,
no, I'm not even trying to diss. Like I'm saying, like me, people's like
mhm.
they ask like, oh, where are you from, stuff like that.
Well, see, like
and
it
they
it
don't
all,
even know.
It all
Yeah.
depends because this whole identity politics thing, whenever it's comfortable for that person to put
Mhm.
you in a minority or not, because I'm Jewish, so I'm part of a minority,
hmm
but when it's comfortable for other people, I'm simply white. Nothing
Yeah.
else matters, right?
hmm
But yeah, who do you think, like, who pushes this idea of white privilege?
I'm not necessarily.
If there's anybody who does just
I don't
push
think you
it.
could label like one particular group of people that would do that. I think definitely like minorities have a resounding, profound like effect on defining white privilege. Like an example, like regardless of like any type of organization that does it, is like that categorizes people and categorizes them as not suffering but
Mm.
being entitled to white privilege. So I'm not necessarily sure, but I think definitely like minority people like see like what's going on in our world, see that white people do have an advantage, but then they take advantage of that advantage and then classify it as white privilege in order to justify any discrimination towards anybody else that isn't part of that particular group.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For me, like us three,
Yeah.
you can look at our profiles and you can pick a minority. I have cerebral palsy, my right leg, therefore I'm a disabled minority.
Mhm.
I'm Palestinian, Arab minority. I'm Jewish minority. I'm whatever.
Yeah.
Mixed marriage. You can pick from a list of minorities. Elliot the same, Daniel the same.
Yeah.
But for us, the idea of white privilege, the first word that comes to my head is ridiculous.
hmm
Me too.
Personally,
Personally.
in a way that I think it exists in some way, shape, or form. I just think it's ridiculous. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
we are not in power right now. Our generation will be in power in 30, 40 years.
It's kind of
Right
scary
now,
too.
it's the first generation, second generation, early immigrants to Canada, to the States, and I think that a big push of white privilege for me and how I realized that white privilege was a thing is the justice system.
Mm-hmm.
Look, in all these cases we hear about Freddie Gray, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, all these cases we hear about, we weren't there.
Mhm.
That's the disclaimer I'm giving. We weren't there. We don't know what happened. We don't know what's going through the cop's head. Even in Canada, our own Sammy Ateem. We don't know what that's like. We don't know what went down, right?
Mhm.
But you look at the tape of Sammy Ateem, for one. You look at the tape of Freddie Gray screaming, "I can't breathe."
Mhm.
You look at the tape of Michael Brown screaming,
It's
"Hands
disturbing.
up."
It's disturbing.
I have hands up, don't shoot. You look at all that, and you see these cops get off the hook time and time again. In the Ferguson riots, the Ferguson population is 67% black, and there are only 3 black cops on the police force.
It's a very disproportionate
It's a
representation
very
in the police,
disproportionate
in the police
representation.
station force.
And when they were arresting the police department, they arrested all the 3 black cops. So in my eyes, that's an scapegoat to just show that they're combating police brutality, but they pick the minorities that made it through all the extra hurdles they had to go through to get where they are. For example, there's an Asian cop on the NYPD that was just charged with a bajillion cases of sexual assault.
Mhm.
And he got how in the States they give you 700 years in jail?
yeah.
Yeah.
He got one of those, 230 years.
Like multiple consecutive life sentences.
To backtrack, I can't remember if it was Oklahoma or NYPD.
Mhm.
So if you guys want to search that up,
Yeah,
do
definitely
so.
look it up.
He gets 1,000 years in jail, and then there are these cops. There are these cops that get nothing, and there is so much evidence. You see people like Brock Turner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the people that caught
That
Brock
just
Turner.
does not make sense whatsoever.
Yeah, the people that caught Brock Turner in the act. You know, they had to go through counseling because they couldn't believe what they saw. Everybody was like,
I mean, I'd be petrified.
Yeah.
I'd actually be petrified if I saw somebody
Exactly.
violating a woman like that, or a man, or anything like that.
And
It's disturbing.
You know, like his dad wrote a whole letter. You know, he shouldn't deserve that much of a punishment for 20 minutes of action, which is
That's
disgusting.
That's like so downplaying what he did, and that's kind of like it's disgusting how he downplayed what he did into
Exactly.
the changing of the words and saying like, oh, rape is now just only 20 minutes of action.
And everybody was like, "Oh, poor Brock Turner. He was on his way to the Olympics." Blah blah blah.
I don't
blah,
care.
Blah. I don't
care.
I was gonna swear. Shouldn't do that.
I don't care.
I don't care.
But see, that's how heated you get, and you rightfully should be.
And he got 6 months, and then it was reduced to 3.
Mm-hmm.
And he also got 97% more than most rapists get. Now, that case is a Venn diagram with things like patriarchy and rape culture and all that.
Okay, but do you think we live in a rape culture?
And that's for another show. But yes, but I'll elaborate when we do talk about that. You know, and then you see like black rapists get such a harsher sentence. You see Asian rapists get such a harsher sentence. I can bring up hard documents. I'm not an encyclopedia, but you know, if you're immersed in SJW Twitter or minority Twitter, you see them comparing.
I don't think it's wrong to call it Black Twitter. If that's
No,
what you're referring
yeah,
to.
Black Twitter.
Yeah, it's Black Twitter.
You see Black Twitter being like, "Hey, PSA, look at this and versus that. Look at this versus Brock Turner. Look at this versus Freddie Gray. Look at this." And that's white privilege. To see these white people get off with a slap on the wrist and these black people get 40, 50, 60, 100 years in jail.
And it also goes into the idea of like over the last 50, 60 years in terms of the war on drugs and stuff like that. Like you've seen like multiple cases, like with hundreds of thousands, if not thousands, actually probably millions of cases of minorities who are getting charged with the same, like if in the comparison between a minority and somebody who's white who gets the same charge, in terms of their sentence, how different it is. A white person might possibly get only probation for a couple of years, or maybe
house
arrest, or maybe if you're
with visitation,
or
minimum security prison,
exactly, stuff like that.
Community service.
And you see black people and Latino people, they get like what, 25 years, 35 years, and it's ridiculous. It shouldn't be like that.
And another thing, you know.
It's a problem with our justice system.
Yeah, that's also a big problem with injustice in our justice system. But another thing is that, you know, even in the States, you see the Bill Clinton administration put the harshest criminal laws in place for African Americans. Like there are African Americans that couldn't vote in this election because of laws that were still from the Clinton administration. Places like West Virginia, they have a high black population, and their voter ID laws are the highest they can be. If you're in poverty, which is a lot of what the black and Latinx population is, you know, it's harder to have registered documents. You're moving from house to house. You don't have a stable address. You don't have whatever.
I don't think that's necessarily true. Like I think I was watching a pretty interesting video where somebody was interviewing white people, and he's like, "Oh, what do you think about in terms of reforming voting laws?" And there's like, "Oh yeah, I saw." He's like, "Oh, it's like they're automatically white people. Like a significant amount of those white people were making assumptions that black people are automatically like unintelligent, that they don't know how to like apply for
no, but that's not what
documents."
I was saying.
I know it's not what you're saying. I'm saying like voting laws are such a controversial topic. Like it's so much gray area
in it.
There's so much
more into it. There's things like gerrymandering.
Exactly. That's a difference, and that's in terms of like the actual political system. In terms of voting, it's very, very different like that. Yeah. It was the assumption that like black people or Latino people do not have the ability to get their license or do not have the ability to vote and stuff like that. That's not true at all.
The DMV is the same DMV for a black person and a white person.
Yeah.
There's no DMV for blacks. DMV
or they're making assumptions how like certain black people are undocumented, like and they wouldn't have that. Therefore, they wouldn't be able to vote.
No,
and that's not true at all.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that in communities, like I know that there's a town in Arizona that during this election they had one polling station for every 13,000 people, and coincidentally,
it's not enough.
Yeah, and coincidentally, it was a majority Latino town. And it's the poorer communities that are getting polling stations removed and transferred and switched and closed. Like, that's a big problem. So, do you want to go as far as calling it silencing the black vote? Sure. That's where I'm going to take it. That's the leap of faith that I'm going to make. But that's also, in itself, white privilege, because it's a majority white caucus. You want to look at the things like the Oscars. Oscars so white. Look, I don't necessarily agree with that. There are some years that majority black films got awards, but the Oscar Commission, it's 97% white. And 3% Latinx.
I think that's definitely has to do with the history of like the film, the history of the film industry.
You want to go back as far as blackface? That didn't end such a long time ago.
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
You've seen people who still like use blackface and stuff like that, and I don't know. Obviously, like they tried to defend their actions and stuff like that, but
like Jake Gyllenhaal in The Prince of Persia. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, he's white.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be the Prince of Persia, right? And that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Or was it Michael Fassbender who's in for Assassin's Creed? He's white and he's like Italian, or he's trying to play as an Italian person.
I think so. There's also the guy who's playing Michael Jackson now as a white guy. Michael Jackson was black.
Oh yeah, doesn't make any sense.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, this idea of white privilege, has it perhaps been taken a little bit too far sometimes? I mean, a recent video came out about white privilege in which a black man dressed in baggy clothes versus when he was dressed in a suit, he experienced different reactions people had towards him. So when he was wearing a suit, people were very kind to him and treated him with respect. And when he was wearing the baggy clothes, people kind of shunned him and didn't really respect him. So does that kind of mean that your appearance matters regardless of your skin color? Or
look, I
it
have
definitely does, yeah.
I have the most bruck up ugly sweatpants, and I have a very ugly sweater to go with that. And when I get up and I just don't care about what I'm doing today, I put them on. I get looks in public. And you know what? Just to combat it, I have this fedora. I wear the fedora too. If I'm not asking for people to judge me, then I don't know what I'm doing.
That's like fashion suicide right
Exactly. There. I'm committing fashion suicide. When I dressed up in my nice suit for our photo shoot, people were looking at me and going like, "Oh, look at this guy! Look at these."
This guy's going places.
Yeah, look at these dapper gentlemen hitting up Bay Street. You know, the wolves of Bay Street.
Oh, they probably have an internship.
Yeah,
with
they've got
internships.
They've got view. Like, look at them. They're going places, and we are. Look, we're here.
Yeah.
But I digress. What I wanted to say in terms of that, and in terms of something else that I have to say, I want to add, Ellen DeGeneres hosted the Oscars, and I think she's my favorite Oscar host so far.
I didn't know. I didn't watch it, so
you should have.
Yeah, she was great.
She was great.
I really liked her.
Yeah, and she came on, and she's like, either 12 Years a Slave wins, or we're all racist. And I think, as funny as it was, it has some truth. If 12 Years a Slave didn't win, people would be like, oh.
I've watched the movie like twice, I think, and that's a really good movie.
I can't. I had to stop. It was too much for me.
What do you mean? What was too much?
The
scene, when he was getting whipped and stuff?
Yeah, I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't even watch Glory. I don't know if you guys know the movie about
Did you watch Selma?
War. Couldn't watch Selma either.
I was pretty good too. Like when they're on the bridge in Alabama, like on the way to Montgomery, because they're going from Selma to Montgomery, and the whole police force is right there standing in front of them, and then the sergeant just blows the whistle, and then all the cops, they're on horses and stuff, and the batons, and they're just beating the living muck out of them.
See, I want to watch this movie.
Yeah.
I just don't.
I think it's educational. Like obviously, it's not like
it's
accurate.
Take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
It's not a documentary.
Yeah.
It's meant to be for entertainment and such. That's where I think white privilege has gone too far a little bit.
With movies.
Yeah, like one of the Oscar Commission members gave an interview about how Selma didn't get an award. And they said, look, of the movies on the roster that were on next to Selma.
That was 2014.
Yeah, or 2015.
2015.
On the roster with Selma, there were so many other great movies.
Could you remember?
Whiplash.
Okay.
Birdman.
Yeah.
I
watched that too, both of them.
What else was there? Was the Revenant with that?
Revenant won.
Yeah, he got that Oscar.
Yeah, he finally should.
The Revenant. There were so many other great movies. I didn't watch Selma.
I would agree that any of those three movies would have beat Selma.
Would have beat Selma. You watched Selma, and you would agree.
I watched Selma twice, and I really enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, but those other movies, like for example, Whiplash, I watched that movie 3 times, and I love it every time.
Yeah,
it's an insane movie. I recommend it. That's where I think white privilege has gone a little too far. I don't know what it's like to be a black person. I will never know what it's like to be a black person. when you're walking in the street and you're getting looks, and when you're in a convenience store and the convenience store
Thinks you're
owner
automatically gonna
follows
steal or
you,
something like that. Yeah.
I don't know what that's like. I will never know what that's like. So I can talk from my perspective. I've been discriminated in 2 places on this planet: Amsterdam and Israel.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
What happened in Amsterdam?
In Amsterdam, they looked at my name and they looked at my mother's name. They pulled us out of the line and they patted us down.
It was in the airport.
And I
okay.
was a 9-year-old kid and I got patted down.
Wow.
And I believe that's discrimination. I went to Israel. This was stupid of me, but I was doing a presentation on how America influenced the creation of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And I was walking in Tel Aviv, the capital of Israel, and I took a picture of the American embassy, and behind me they're like, no, in Hebrew, no picture, no picture, no picture. And I'm like, shut up, whatever. And then I took a picture, and they were very nice to me. They looked at my mom, my very white Jewish family. They were like, hi, my name is whatever. I'm the boss or manager of this embassy here. 3 weeks ago we had a bit of a terror scare. There were some apartments across the street of the embassy, and there were some people caught taking pictures and looking at blueprints. So it was a bit of a scare. So we're just taking some extra security now. Can I just see your ID? I give them my ID. They look at us more. All of a sudden their mood changes.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's okay.
No.
Oh, they were scared?
Scared.
Oh.
Because my name is an Arab last name.
Okay.
My dad's the one who's Arab.
Mm-hmm.
So they all of a sudden they're talking in Hebrew. They stop talking in English. They're talking in Hebrew. They're looking at me. They have 3 guys surround me with guns.
Really?
They're going into their walkie-talkie.
How old were you at this time?
I was 15.
Okay.
But to be fair, I was wearing a leather jacket, ripped jeans, and I had a very long beard because I hadn't shaved.
Mm-hmm.
So I may have spooked them a little bit.
Yeah. That makes
But
sense.
I digress. So they started asking me where I live, who I'm staying with, where's my family, what's my dad's name, brother's name, uncle's name, and then they let me go.
Wow.
So it wasn't so much, hey,
Like, they
how's
got
it
you on record.
going? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, good to see ya, listen, it was like, where are you going, where are you staying,
Yeah.
And then when I was studying, they were like, come on, where are you staying, and my mom was coming, it's like, he's my son, it's like, no, get away, and they were suddenly pushing my mom away, and it was like a whole different mood.
Damn.
So, that's where I've been discriminated. I haven't been discriminated in Toronto ever in my life. I walk freely. I don't get any looks from anyone except if I'm wearing my fedora, and I deserve that.
Maybe like aside from like yesterday, maybe, and the only time I'm not personally discriminated, but I felt like offended.
Yeah.
And I usually don't get offended, but yeah. Maybe I think it was like a couple years ago. I was in Barrie, and obviously we know Barrie's up north, so
that's a pretty white place.
yeah, I'm not even gonna lie, it's a
It's
significant.
further Newmarket.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's right there on
Newmarket.
near Lake Simcoe.
Yeah, it's on the little sort of bay.
Yeah. And I was there to play some soccer. Like,
Yeah.
it was a soccer tournament we could, and we
Yeah.
already played a couple games and stuff like that. And then I think I'm walking like after one of the games, and I'm going back to the car, and it's a white dad with his son or something like that, and the kid's just like fooling around, just behaving like whatever. He's just misbehaving, and the guy's like, "Oh, stop acting like a lazy Mexican."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a Mexican. I'm like, I know what he means. Like when he's saying Mexican, he means like all Spanish people.
Like a lazy Latino.
Yeah, like, he's like, stop acting like a lazy Latino.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Like, he's not even doing anything.
Like that's a slur.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a slur.
Yeah, like it sounds like a slur almost
Yeah.
like that. He's just using the part of like the country, but it's still offensive no matter what.
No, it's even offensive. Like not in the same level, but to me as well.
Yeah, it's like it's just like, why would you say that?
Yeah.
So we actually have finally a message. They asked me not to say their name, but they believe that white privilege doesn't exist in the general public, but there are still lots of specific people who will give more advantages to white people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But
What do you
that's white
think of that?
privilege. The people that will give advantages to those white people is playing white privilege.
So I guess what they mean is that it's not a societal thing. However, it's specific people. That's
But
just
they give that power to
that-
white people.
yes.
Okay.
So like for example, white supremacist groups, right?
Yeah. Northern Lions, London, Ontario. We have one.
Mhm.
That's the name of that group.
Yeah, the Northern Lions.
They're a white supremacist
Yeah,
group in
on
Canada.
Google Maps they have their location,
Mhm.
and there's a swastika in their corn maze
Wow.
adjacent to their property,
Damn.
and nobody's doing anything about it because the people in London are cool with it, and that's a
crazy.
big problem.
That is a problem.
Look, like I said before, I don't know if the person commenting missed it, but I said that, when you go to the grocery store, you don't get in and you go to the checkout and they're like, okay, this is your white privilege tax, you save 20%, and be on with your day. Like, I don't think that, in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, there's the white privilege, Section 45, white privilege. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying it's engraved in society.
It's almost like an unwritten
What
thing.
I am trying to say, however, is in Canada, there is a gender equality wage study, and it's 3 white men.
Okay.
That's the group of people that's studying, and I think that's an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was.
I think also
intentional.
in terms of white privilege, it's not only just classified as white privilege. They would classify it as other types of privilege, like
patriarchy,
like the patriarchy, like male
Ableist.
privilege and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then when you combine someone who's white and male,
it's like,
you're
double
the most
whammy.
you're the most privileged person on the planet. You shouldn't say anything whatsoever.
Yeah, you get everything handed to you with a
Yeah.
spoon. That's not true.
It's not
So-
true at all.
So you guys brought up the fact that male and white becomes,
It's like super
bam,
privilege.
superpower, super privilege. Yeah, I mean your final form, right?
Yeah.
So, question: do white women benefit from white privilege as much as white men do? Because sometimes, you'll always hear like white women will sometimes accuse white men of white privilege, and well, you're white too, so. Is it also based on the fact that they're women that changes the
Definitely.
Yeah,
concept?
You wanna go?
No, go ahead.
I don't have much to say about this because I'm not a woman, but what I do want to point out is, as optimistic as someone can be about Mr. Trump, as
Oh yeah, his inauguration's today.
yeah, no, tomorrow.
Oh, I thought it was
Tomorrow
tomorrow.
at 12.
Oh my bad.
Tomorrow at 12.
Oh yeah, Friday, not Thursday.
Yeah.
My bad.
As optimistic as someone can be about Mr. Trump, as optimistic as someone can, look at the Republican Party. The Republican Party is generally anti-woman and anti-feminist. I want to say that. It could be a generalization. There could be Republicans that are the most feminist people you've ever met. But the Republican Party has issues with gender equality. That's my stance. With that, 40% of white women in America voted Trump. So all of a sudden, this Make America Great Again became more important than feminism. Because feminism affects everybody.
Yeah.
The problem that you see in day to day is that a lot of feminists is what are known on Twitter as white feminists. That all of a sudden, if you see people getting clitoral circumcision in Africa, they're like, oh, it's this Muslim regime that's doing it. It's this anti-regime, and you're like, all these women in Africa, they're like, oh, it's the government's fault. All of a sudden, it doesn't become about female empowerment. And I'm not calling out all feminists. I'm calling out a group of people that I've seen. It could be even anecdotal feminists. But all of a sudden, when you're a woman of color, it's a different story.
Definitely.
It's also we just got another message from Austin Blazes,
Yeah.
and he said, well, with white privilege going on, how do you feel about affirmative action? With Harvard stating on their brochures, if you're a colored female, you have a much higher chance to get in. Additionally, if you're a female in investment banking, it's like hitting a gold mine. But that's more of a male-female privilege than white privilege.
No,
so,
but that's female empowerment.
so what do you think of the affirmative action then?
Look,
I don't like it, to be honest.
I
don't
kind
like
of
it.
like it because for too long women have had to jump through too many hurdles.
I'm talking about affirmative action
Can someone
for.
define affirmative action for me?
What I think, well, maybe my
Yeah.
interpretation of affirmative action is giving an employer giving a future employee the ability, like giving them the job in order to fill like a particular type of ethnic or gender quota.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think affirmative action is then?
I didn't actually know what the term was. I
Okay.
heard it my whole life, and I was
Yeah.
too scared to ask.
That's what I
was.
think, because I've discussed this a couple of times in
Yeah.
politics. In terms of like government jobs, like right now with the Canadian Privy
Yeah.
Council, with the Prime Minister's office, like those are federal agents, like they work for the government, and they think that like they're implementing affirmative action right now, so they're having a lot more Black people, a lot more South Asian people and women
that's good.
going in there. I think it's good.
I think
Yes,
it's very good.
I do think it's good. I'm not gonna disagree with that. I think it doesn't make any sense. An example, like I don't want to be. I feel like that limits people as well. I feel like an example, like I don't want to get a job, like at any whatever. If I ever do get a job, I don't want to get a job. But they're like, oh, this guy's Latino, Yeah, we'll just give him the job just because he's a Latino. I don't want to be given the job for that just because of
No,
my skin or my.
you wanna be
you
judged-
I want to be given the
You want to
job.
be judged based on your skills.
Exactly, because I'm qualified for the job and because they think that I can do a good job.
Look,
That's
I
why.
would like to think places like TD, for example, they don't go out on the street. They look for Joe Schmo. He looks kind of black. They take his pulse and they're like, "Hey, you're black, right? You got a job as a bank teller.
Mhm.
You want to go through undergrad, Ted Rogers, Schulich, whatever.
Yeah.
You want to go through the steps that you need to be. What happens is that when you're pushed out into the world after academia,
Mhm.
I believe that people of color, especially women of color and women in general,
Mhm.
have a harder time jumping
Adjusting.
into the, pardon my my bluntness, but into the sausage fest that is, the tech world, the engineering world, the biomedical world.
I think there's a major problem right now in terms of like jobs and different fields of studies and of work, and how like the gender parity is there. So there's lots of jobs like there that are primarily only women,
Yeah.
and there's lots of jobs that are primarily only men.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like that anymore.
think-
we need to find a way to have like inclusiveness into
Yeah.
both like,
But
systems like that.
I think that at this point in society, if you work hard for what you want, you can attain it. Like a study's been done, most graduates are women. 60% of graduates are women in the
Yeah,
U.S.
Women are kicking ass.
And
And good for them.
A Cornell University study said that women are being taken 2 to 1 over men for STEM jobs, right?
Yeah.
That's
So I
science,
think-
technology, engineering,
engineering,
and
math. Yes. So I think that
Mhm.
obviously there are sexist people, but I think that if I agree with what you said,
Mhm.
if you have the skills, I think you should be accepted. That's why I think you guys saw the bus shelter signs where it shows a white man and a black man with the question, "Who would you hire?"
Yeah.
And I just found that ridiculous because I don't know any of their credentials,
Yeah.
and that's encouraging racism in my
It
opinion.
does, yeah. Because if you
Because
say
then you start
like, oh, I'm
debating.
gonna like, if
Yeah.
you say, oh, I'm gonna hire the black guy, they'll be like, oh, why are you gonna hire the black guy? Like, what's wrong with the white guy? And you
Look-
can say the same thing, vice versa.
Look, for example, I'm going to give this quickly. My mother is an occupational therapist. They help people rehabilitate after car accidents.
Mhm.
I know that in her company she has a lot of people that speak a variety of languages. And for the longest time they were looking for someone that speaks Urdu,
hmm
the language spoken by Pakistanis, Afghanis.
And Urdu is like a combination of other.
And Urdu is
Arabic
a little
languages.
bit of a diversion from Hindu. Like Urdu people can understand Hindu, and Hindu people can understand Urdu, but it's a bit of a different thing. And like
Yeah.
on applications, that was a very good point.
Mhm.
And if all of a sudden you look at that and being like, hey, they're only looking for South Asian people,
Mhm.
affirmative action. What the hell?
Mhm.
I applied. Why didn't I get accepted? Well, they're looking for someone that speaks Urdu.
I think, but like, it shouldn't be like as long as somebody speaks Urdu and has that skill,
Yeah.
then it should be fine. Like if there's there's like a white person or a black person that you wouldn't necessarily
Yeah.
assume to speak like any type of other language besides English,
Yeah.
then that's an amazing skill, and
Yeah,
you should be
yeah.
rewarded for that, and you should be able to have the credentials to get that type of job.
Another example, in TD, or in any bank,
Mhm.
I say TD a lot because I've got family that works at TD. I'm going to do this really quickly. In TD, you go to bank tellers, you go to bank advisors, and you like to see someone that looks like you. You like to see someone that
You
speaks your
identify
language.
with them. You really.
So
do.
if you want to hire a quota of black people that speak Swahili, or they speak, I don't know, there's some other languages, oh no, they speak Arabic, or whatever, you want those people, and if you hire black people that way that speak those languages, or if you hire black people in general to grab their business and to get them more involved, then I think that's fine with it, and if that's American affirmative action,
American action.
then so be it. And those are my final thoughts.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we do have to go, but that's our show for this week. I want to thank everybody that tuned in and everybody that messaged us live. Again, you can message us your thoughts and opinions, and they'll be read live on air. You can let us know if you want your name said or not. We're totally comfortable with that. So we'll have a brand new episode of the Raben Report next week. Same day, same time, same people. And do you guys have any last things you want to say with about 30 seconds left?
Good luck, America.
Yeah.
Look America with tomorrow. Yeah, we discussed a little bit about Trump. If you have want to say 15 seconds about what it means tomorrow.
I don't want to say go Trump, but I'm saying good luck. Yeah.
Go away, Trump.
No, good luck. I guess. I hope if try
I hope the Trump train doesn't crash.
Yeah. Bernie 20 with 20.
Bernie 2020.
Bernie 2020. Yeah. So You can also message us your ideas for show topics in the future. Next week, we might be talking about something political again, but as usual, we'll have a little recap of what's current in the news. Thank you and have a great day.